I buried Patricia on a Tuesday. They fired me on a Friday. The bills lasted a lot longer. My name's Thomas Sullivan. Most people call me Tom. I'm 54 years old. And that morning in the conference room at Apex Defense Corporation wasn't how I thought my 12-year career would end. Patricia had been gone 3 months. The cancer moved fast. Hospital stays, specialists, hospice care. The final tally came to just under $320,000. Insurance covered some. Not enough. I'd been paying minimums, stretching it out month by month, waiting for bonus season. That $48,000 was supposed to make a real dent in what we owed. My daughters were counting on that money too. Sarah, 22, was finishing her senior year at Georgia Tech. Emily, 19, was a sophomore at Auburn. Between the two of them, we had $180,000 in outstanding tuition loans. Patricia and I had always said we'd handle their education. Now it was just me. "I'm sorry, Tom, but effective immediately, your position is being eliminated." That's what Claire Patterson said. No eye contact, just click, click, click with her pen, like she was checking off a grocery list. Milk, eggs, guy's entire career. Claire was 38, MBA from Wharton, all theory and no field experience. She sat across from me with this little smirk, her blazer perfectly pressed. This woman couldn't tell the difference between a government contract and a grocery receipt, but somehow she was deciding my fate. Paul Rodriguez sat next to her, HR guy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Corporate restructuring," Claire said, like those 2 words explained everything. I'd closed a $41 million government contract 6 weeks earlier. Project Guardian. Classified Department of Defense work that I'd spent 10 months negotiating using contacts I'd built over 26 years in the defense sector. Started those relationships back when I was Army Rangers, served 3 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan between 1988 and 1998. You learn to read people when your life depends on it. After the Rangers, I spent 14 years with different defense contractors, building my reputation, learning the business. Joined Apex in 2012 when I was 42. Worked my way up from senior analyst to director of government relations. Every contract I touched turned to gold. Every relationship I built lasted decades. And now, Claire was restructuring me right out the door, 10 days before quarterly bonuses. That timing wasn't an accident. "No severance?" I asked. My voice came out flat. "Old training kicking in. Never let them see you rattled." "Standard package," Paul chirped. 2 weeks and a positive reference, assuming no complications. I stood up and grabbed my bag, walked out through an office full of people suddenly fascinated by their computer screens. Nobody makes eye contact when you're the one getting the axe. My desk looked smaller than I remembered. I started boxing up 12 years of my life. Photo of Patricia from before the cancer. Photo of Sarah and Emily at their high school graduations. Coffee mug that said, "World's okayest dad." The girls gave me that last Christmas. Project files, awards, handshake photos with generals. Just swept it all into the cardboard box. The elevator ride down was long. I made it to my truck before the anger hit. Not the hot kind, the cold kind that sits in your chest like a stone. That night, I was 2 bourbons deep, sitting in my garage workshop. I'd been restoring a '78 Chevy pickup for the past 3 years, Patricia's idea. "You need something to work on with your hands," she'd said. The truck was still half apart, tools scattered everywhere, engine blocks sitting on a stand. The garage felt bigger without her, quieter. Patricia Ann Sullivan. We'd been married 28 years. Met her when I was 26, fresh out of the Army, trying to figure out what came next. She was 24, working as a nurse at the VA hospital in Atlanta. Smart, beautiful, patient enough to deal with a guy who still woke up some nights thinking he was back in Fallujah. We had Sarah when I was 32, Emily when I was 35. Good kids, both of them. Sarah was studying aerospace engineering, wanted to work for NASA. Emily was pre-med, said she wanted to be an oncologist after watching what her mom went through. They were the reason I worked 60-hour weeks, the reason I chased every contract, built every relationship, saved every dollar. The garage was where I came to think. Patricia used to joke that I solved more problems with a wrench in my hand than I ever did behind a desk. Tonight, though, the tools weren't helping. I kept thinking about that smirk on Claire's face, about the timing, about 12 years of loyalty getting flushed away because some MBA decided I was too expensive. That's when I remembered the safe, not some desk drawer, the fireproof safe in my bedroom closet where I kept the important documents. Birth certificates, insurance policies, the deed, Patricia's medical records, and my original employment contract from 2012. I walked back into the house, past the living room where Patricia used to read her books, past the kitchen where she'd make coffee every morning at 6 a.m. The house was too quiet now, had been for 3 months. I pulled out the contract, still in its envelope, still had the Apex Defense letterhead from back when George Whitfield actually ran the company like he cared about his people. I unfolded it slowly, read through the legal language line by line. Page 6, Section 12C, buried under a paragraph about termination conditions. If employee is terminated without cause, he shall be entitled to 12% of company net quarterly profit in the quarter of termination in lieu of standard bonus and severance. I read it 3 times. 12%, not of my department's bonus pool. 12% of Apex Defense Corporation's entire quarterly net profit. I sat back in my chair. The leather creaked. That clause. I'd negotiated it back in 2012 when I brought in my first major government contract for Apex. It was supposed to be a retention bonus, a golden handcuff. The old leadership understood that relationships in the defense sector are everything. You need credibility. You need history. Claire never read the contract. Why would she? The woman probably couldn't spell due diligence if you spotted her half the letters. I pulled up my email and searched for anything from Danny Morrison. Danny was an old Army buddy who worked as a senior systems engineer at Apex. We'd served together in the Rangers, had each other's backs in Ramadi when the IEDs were going off every day. Found what I was looking for. An email from 6 weeks ago where he'd accidentally copied me on an internal Q3 forecast. The forecast showed projected net profit for Q3, $11.5 million. The Guardian contract I'd closed would hit the books this quarter. Defense work, high margins, minimal overhead. Apex had landed the whole package: design, manufacturing, ongoing maintenance. Pure profit after the first delivery. I opened the calculator app on my phone. $11.5 million times 0.12, $1,380,000. I stared at that number for a solid minute, set down my bourbon because my hands needed to be steady. That wasn't a bonus, that was generational money. That was every medical bill Patricia left behind paid in full. That was Sarah's and Emily's college debt wiped clean. That was the house fixed, the truck finished, and enough left over to actually breathe. And Claire thought she was screwing me over. I laughed. Couldn't help it. The garage was empty except for the half-built Chevy and scattered tools, and these corporate idiots had just handed me a winning lottery ticket. But here's the thing about corporate types like Claire. They don't just lie once. They lie systematically. They'll build a paper trail, fabricate warnings, twist emails, maybe even forge some performance reviews. Anything to convert a without cause termination into a for cause firing, which meant I needed to move fast. I picked up my phone and pulled up Danny's number. Hesitated for just a second. What I was about to do would put him at risk, asking a guy who still worked there to help me gather evidence. That's not a small favor. But then I thought about Barbara Freeman. Barb. She'd been with Apex for 22 years working in finance. Word around the office was they'd fired her the same week as me. No warning, no explanation. Just restructuring. Claire wasn't restructuring. She was scrubbing the books, cutting high-salary positions right before bonus season so the executive pool looked bigger. I typed out the message to Danny. Need to talk in person, soon as you can. His response came back in under a minute. Tomorrow, O'Malley's Bar, 7 p.m. I set down the phone and looked at the contract again. Section 12C, 12 perfect percent. This wasn't about revenge. Not yet, anyway. This was about accountability. This was about making sure Claire learned that loyalty isn't just some word you put in a mission statement. It's a contract, and contracts have teeth. Monday morning, I walked into Captain James O'Brien's office. If Claire wanted lawyers, I'd bring a JAG officer who'd seen worse than her. The place smelled like burnt coffee and old law books. Jim was 58, ex-military lawyer, the kind of attorney who'd prosecuted war crimes and defended good soldiers from bad orders. His office was downtown Atlanta, 4th floor walk-up, no receptionist. He was already at his desk when I walked in, didn't look up, just pointed at the chair. Tom Sullivan. Danny called ahead, said you got screwed. That's the polite version. Jim took my contract and started reading. No small talk, just straight to the work. After 4 minutes, he set it down and tapped Section 12C. This clause is ironclad. 12% of quarterly net profit if terminated without cause. He leaned back. Back when you had leadership who respected what people brought to the table. Here's your problem, Jim continued. They'll never admit it was without cause. Expect forged performance reviews, fabricated warnings, creative reinterpretation of your work history. So what's our move? We go proactive. Pull every email where leadership praised your work. Client testimonials, anything proving you were an asset. Make it impossible for them to claim you were underperforming. And the real reason they cut me? Jim's eyes narrowed. Money. They fired you to boost the executive bonus pool. If we can prove they did this to multiple people right before payout, we've got leverage. That evening, I met Danny at O'Malley's, back booth where we wouldn't be overheard. He was already nursing a beer when I slid into the seat. Danny looked older than his 52 years. The desert had aged all of us faster than it should have. They're saying you left voluntarily, Danny said. Told everyone you wanted to pursue other opportunities? Voluntarily? That's creative. Claire moved into your office the next day. Danny leaned in. Listen, there's stuff you need to know. Claire's been bragging to the exec team about how lean the numbers look, how much fat she cut before Q3 earnings hit the board. Fat being me, and who else? 2 project managers, someone from HR, and Barbara Freeman from finance. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Barb. She's been there 22 years. I know. They blindsided her the same way. Danny glanced around the bar. And Tom, there's more. That Guardian contract you closed, the $41 million deal, it's hitting the books this quarter. Claire's already counting it in Q3 projections. The profit margin is obscene, so they cut me right after I secured the windfall that's funding their bonuses. Exactly. Deal's still classified. DoD hasn't announced it publicly, but internally, Claire's already celebrating. The pieces were falling into place. This wasn't restructuring. This was calculated theft. Can you get me proof? Emails, meeting notes, internal projections? Danny was quiet for a moment. I can forward what I can from a personal account, but I've got to be careful. I know. I'm not asking you to fall on a sword. There's one more thing. Danny pulled out his phone. Still have management-level permissions. They forgot to revoke my access when they passed me over for promotion last year. I looked at the screen. He had access to the executive shared drive. They forgot. People like Claire don't think about details. Danny put his phone away. I'll get you what you need. We paid separately and left through different exits, just like the old days in Iraq, when operational security meant the difference between going home and coming back in a box. 4 days later, Danny sent me the files through an encrypted email. 3 Word documents pulled from a folder Claire had named Exec Private Q3, Real Genius Level Security. I opened the first document, Performance Improvement Plan with my name on it, dated August 15th. I right-clicked, checked properties. Date created, October 8th, 11:23 a.m. I was fired October 4th. Second document, written warning, dated September 2nd. Date created, October 8th, 11:41 a.m. Third document, final performance review, dated September 28th. Date created, October 8th, 11:58 a.m. All forged, created in a 35-minute span, 4 days after my termination. I called Jim immediately. I've got them. Metadata proves the documents were fabricated after I was fired. Send them now. This changes everything. The second email contained a spreadsheet. Q3 earnings forecast. Internal use only. Every major contract closed that quarter, including Project Guardian, still marked classified. Bottom line, $11.5 million projected net profit. My calculation had been right. 12% of that was $1,380,000. Then I opened the third attachment. Email chain between Claire Patterson and Paul Rodriguez. Subject line, Workforce Optimization Pre-Bonus, dated September 18th, 2 weeks before my termination. Claire had written, need to reduce headcount by 4 before Q3 closes. Targeting high salary positions. Will coordinate timing and documentation. Priority is keeping exec team clean for board review. Paul's response, understood. Ensure performance documentation is in place before any terminations. We'll need to justify cause if challenged. They'd planned it, put it in writing. The idiot actually put it in writing. I forwarded everything to Jim with one line, game over. He called back in under 15 minutes. Tom, this isn't a lawsuit anymore. This is a nuclear weapon. If this goes public, it triggers an SEC investigation. The CEO won't let that happen. Not over Claire. Then let's make him choose. That night, Jim drafted the letter. 1 page, legal letterhead, surgical precision. Per Section 12C of Mr. Sullivan's employment contract, we formally request payment of 12% of Apex Defense Corporation's net quarterly profit due to his termination without cause. Attached documentation demonstrates fabricated performance records and premeditated workforce reduction to inflate executive compensation. We are prepared to file suit and notify relevant regulatory authorities unless this matter is resolved within 10 business days. The letter went out via certified mail the next morning. I got the signature confirmation 3 days later. Now we waited. I spent those days in my garage working on the Chevy. There's something about rebuilding an engine that clears your head. Every part has a purpose. Every bolt has a torque specification. You follow the manual, do the work right, and it runs. Simple as that. Patricia used to bring me coffee while I worked. She'd lean against the workbench watching me wrestle with some stubborn part and just talk about her day, about Sarah's latest engineering project or Emily's biology class, about the garden she wanted to plant next spring. She never got to see that spring. The phone rang on day 6, Sarah calling from Georgia Tech. Dad, how are you holding up? I'm fine, sweetheart. How's your capstone project coming? It's good. But, Dad, I've been thinking, maybe I should take a semester off, get a job, help with the bills. My chest tightened. Absolutely not. But the tuition, and with Mom's medical bills. Don't you worry about that. Your job is to graduate. Mine is to figure out the rest. Dad, Sarah, trust me on this one. Everything's going to be fine. After I hung up, I walked back into the garage and picked up a wrench. Started working on the transmission. Every turn of the bolt was another step closer to having something that worked the way it was supposed to. 6 days later, a courier showed up at my door. Hand-delivered envelope, thick paper, expensive law firm letterhead. Inside was a settlement offer, one-time payment of $125,000, no admission of wrongdoing, standard NDA. I called Jim. They're offering $125,000. That's barely 3 times your bonus, but nowhere near what the contract says they owe you. I could hear the smile in his voice. They're scared, Tom. What's next? Now we ask for a meeting, face to face. We show them everything we have and we watch them do the math. And if they refuse, they won't. Because the alternative is federal investigators asking why they cooked the books and forged documents. 3 days after we rejected their settlement offer, Paul Rodriguez called. Mr. Sullivan, we'd like to meet to discuss resolution options. I'm listening. In person. You, your counsel, our legal team, and Mr. Whitfield, George Whitfield, the CEO. They were bringing in the top. Thursday, 10 a.m., our offices. Jim nodded when I looked at him. We'll be there. That night I called both my daughters, didn't tell them about the lawsuit, just wanted to hear their voices. Sarah was stressed about her thesis defense. Emily was worried about organic chemistry, normal college problems, the kind I wanted them to keep having. I love you girls, I said before hanging up. Love you too, Dad, they said, just like their mother used to. Thursday morning was coming. Time to see if 12 years of loyalty and a well-written contract clause could beat corporate greed and forgery. I had a feeling they could. Thursday morning, Jim and I walked into Apex headquarters. The conference room had that corporate, sterile feel. Glass table, leather chairs, bottled water lined up like ammunition. Claire sat on the far side, wouldn't look at me directly, kept adjusting her blazer, checking her phone, fidgeting like a kid called to the principal's office. Her confidence from that firing meeting was nowhere to be found. Next to her was George Whitfield, 64 years old, 3-piece suit, silver hair, the kind of man who could fire an entire division without raising his voice. I'd only met him twice in 12 years, both times at company Christmas parties. He ran Apex like it was his personal kingdom. Paul Rodriguez sat at the head with his laptop. 2 other lawyers flanked him, young associates with that hungry billable hours look. Jim sat down next to me, yellow legal pad in front of him. He looked relaxed, like this was just another Thursday. That's what 20 years of military law does to you. Nothing rattles you when you've prosecuted war criminals. Gentlemen, Paul began, we appreciate you coming in. We believe there's been some misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Jim's voice cut clean. Your client fired my client without cause, triggering a contractual obligation, then fabricated documentation to justify that firing. We have proof. Paul's jaw tightened. That's a serious accusation. It's a statement of fact. Jim slid a flash drive across the table. May I? Paul looked at Whitfield. He nodded once. Paul plugged in the drive. The screen behind him lit up. Jim stood, clicked his remote. A Word document appeared. Performance Improvement Plan, dated August 15th. Submitted as evidence, Mr. Sullivan was terminated for cause. Click. The metadata panel filled the screen. Date created, October 8th, 11:23 a.m. Mr. Sullivan was terminated October 4th. This document didn't exist until 4 days later. Click. Another document. Written warning, dated September 2nd. Created October 8th, 11:41 a.m. Click. Final review, dated September 28th. Created October 8th, 11:58 a.m. The room was dead quiet. You could hear the air conditioning humming, all fabricated, all created in a 35-minute window, all backdated. Claire's face had gone pale. Whitfield's eyes shifted to Claire like a laser sight targeting an enemy position. Second item. Jim pulled up a new file. Sworn affidavit from Barbara Freeman, former senior finance analyst. 22 years with your company. Fired 4 days after she raised concerns about revenue recognition for the Guardian contract. Whitfield's jaw tightened. I could see him doing the math in his head. Mrs. Freeman flagged accounting irregularities. Deferred income moved into Q3 to artificially inflate quarterly profit before bonus calculations. Jim clicked again. Original projections and revised projections your CFO ordered. The numbers told the story. Revenue pushed from Q4 into Q3. Made the quarter look $2.8 million better than reality. Mrs. Freeman tried to escalate. Got shut down, then got fired. Jim raised a hand before Paul could speak. Third item. Email chain between Miss Patterson and your office, Mr. Rodriguez, dated September 18th. The email appeared on screen. Claire's words, need to reduce headcount by 4 before Q3 closes, targeting high-salary positions. Paul's response, ensure performance documentation is in place before any terminations. Jim, let that sit. Let them read it. Let them understand exactly how deep they were buried. So let's summarize. Jim turned to face Whitfield. Mr. Sullivan secured a $41 million classified contract that inflated your quarterly profit. Then he was fired without cause. Then documents were forged. Then a financial analyst was fired for questioning the accounting manipulation. He paused. We have testimony from 3 other employees. We have more emails. We have server logs. Whitfield stared at the screen, then turned slowly toward Claire. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Claire, step outside. Sir, I can explain. Step outside. Claire stood so fast her chair rolled backward. She grabbed her phone, fumbled it, nearly dropped it, then practically ran for the door. Her career was over, and everyone in that room knew it. The silence was beautiful. Whitfield turned back. Mr. Rodriguez, clear the room. Paul started gathering his laptop. Not you, Whitfield said to Jim. You stay. The other lawyers filed out. Paul went last, closing the door with a soft click. Just 4 of us now. Me, Jim, Whitfield, and the wreckage of Claire's career spread across a PowerPoint presentation. Whitfield folded his hands. Mr. Sullivan, you're not here to burn the building down. You're here to get paid. I met his eyes. That's correct. And you, he looked at Jim, are here to make sure I understand the alternative is federal investigators. Jim smiled. Didn't say a word. Whitfield reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. Thin, already prepared, he slid it across the table. Full 12% based on actual quarterly profit. Final audit came in at $11.5 million. That's $1,380,000. Wire transfer within 3 business days of signature. Jim opened the folder, started reading. His face stayed neutral, which meant the numbers were real. NDA? I asked. Standard confidentiality. You don't discuss the settlement or circumstances with press, competitors, or future employers. And Claire? Terminated effective immediately. Breach of internal conduct policy. I tapped the folder. 2 conditions. Whitfield waited. 1. Barbara Freeman gets a consulting agreement, $250,000. Whitfield's eyes narrowed slightly. Done. 2. Danny Morrison gets promoted to senior systems engineer. Title and pay. He's been doing the work for 2 years. You're protecting your people. I'm making sure you remember what loyalty looks like. Whitfield was quiet, then nodded. Agreed. Paperwork finalized by end of business today. He stood, extended his hand. I stood and shook it. His grip was firm, dry, emotionless. One more thing, Whitfield said as we reached the door. We'd like you to consider returning Senior Vice President significant compensation. I looked at him, at his expensive suit and corner office empire. I appreciate the offer, I said, but I'm done working for people who need lawyers to teach them ethics. 3 business days later, the wire hit my account. $1,380,000. I stared at the number until my vision blurred. Then I logged into the hospital billing portal. Patricia's balance, $0. Paid in full. I called Sarah first. Sweetheart, how's that thesis coming? Dad, I'm actually stressed about the tuition for next semester. Don't be. It's handled. Silence. What do you mean? I mean, you and Emily can focus on your studies. Everything else is taken care of. I could hear her crying. Dad, how? Remember what your mom used to say? Sometimes good things happen to good people. Just took a little longer than expected. 6 months later, I started Sullivan Defense Consulting. Small firm, veteran-owned. Danny joined me part-time. We help other veterans navigate government contracts, teach them how to build relationships the right way. The money from Apex sits in investments, most of it anyway. I kept enough to set up something I'd been thinking about since Patricia died, the Patricia Ann Sullivan Fund for Cancer Research, $100,000 a year going to a research hospital in Atlanta that specialized in the kind of cancer that took her. They put her name on a plaque in the research wing. I went to see it once. Stood there for a few minutes reading her name in brushed steel letters. Patricia Ann Sullivan, 1970 to 2024. Beloved wife and mother. These days I wake up every morning in a house that's mine, with daughters who don't worry about tuition, and a business that helps veterans who know what loyalty means. Claire Patterson taught me that contracts have teeth. I just had to show her how to read the fine print. That's not revenge, that's just accountability.